All right. Welcome, friends, to another episode of Faith, Fitness, Joy. My name is Rochelle Renee, and I am your host. I'm also a health coach and healer. I am so grateful to be back with you all this week. I was terribly sick last week, hence my voice being a little bit on the rough side. So I do apologize for sounding a little bit hoarse, if you will. I'm still recovering from whatever it was that I had. But like I said, it is great to be back. I am really excited to be talking about this topic with you today. Today's episode is called Alcohol and its Impact on Health and Weight Loss. Something that I've just been diving deeper into in recent months. I recently um, crossed the 1 year mark alcohol free myself. And so I continue to really, I guess you could say, feel the benefits of having kind of given alcohol up completely. That being said, I do know that alcohol is sort of, part of our lives for a lot of people, and people do enjoy it. And that being said, it's not always your friend when it comes to your weight loss efforts, your fitness efforts, and there's some health impacts of alcohol as well that are important to take in mind and keep in consideration to help you with just kind of being mindful of that and maybe limiting, or even if you're considering cutting alcohol out completely as well. But before we dive into today's topic, just a few reminders. It really helps me a lot if you enjoy the show, if you would like and subscribe, and also share with others that you think would also enjoy or benefit from this podcast, as well as my YouTube channel. So if you are not already, please consider subscribing to the podcast and the YouTube channel. It's underscore Faith Fitness Joy underscore on YouTube, and it's called Faith Fitness Joy Podcast on most podcast apps. Also, I'm going to include a link where you can contribute donations or tips, if you will, for the podcast. That also really is a huge help in keeping the podcast going. So that's also greatly appreciated if you feel inclined to support the show in that way as well. So without further ado, we will get into today's episode. Like I said, today's topic is alcohol and its impact on health and weight loss. So I know for a lot of us, alcohol is a fixture in many social settings, from family gatherings to Friday night outings with friends, family, loved ones. Now, while enjoying a drink can be a pleasurable experience, it's essential to understand how alcohol impacts our overall health and especially our efforts to lose weight, since we talk about that a lot on this podcast. So today I'm delving into the various ways alcohol affects the body, and also offering some tips on how to manage alcohol consumption responsibly. And even, if you want to start thinking about reducing or cutting alcohol out completely. So today I'm going to be talking about alcohol and health, alcohol and weight loss, and tips for managing alcohol consumption. So there was a time that I never would have believed you if you told me that I was going to one day cut alcohol out of my life completely. I loved my wine. It was part of my day to day. I would love to um, come home after work and pour a glass of wine while I cook dinner, which is something that I enjoyed doing. Um, Now, I've never really considered my drinking in the past like out of control or anything along those lines, but I did love to enjoy alcohol. And it was a fairly large part of kind of like like I said, my evenings and my, weekend and social gatherings and things like that. So one of my favorite things, like I said, used to be cooking with a glass of wine. And there was a time that I could not imagine like social gatherings or having people together or anything like that without including alcohol. However, over the years, as my responsibilities increased and I found myself under larger amounts of stress on a daily and then eventually just a chronic basis, I also found that I was sort of turning to alcohol to help me like cope with that more than maybe I had in the past, where in the past it wasn't really something I really used to cope per se at all, really. But I found that it was, at least it seemed like it was helping me calm down in the evenings, and it was also helping me sleep. Um, but I found out that that was really just kind of perceived and not actually the case. And in fact, it turned out that it actually wasn't helping me in either of these things at all. And it was, doing quite the contrary and actually exacerbating those things. Ultimately making my anxiety and panic attacks a lot worse over time. So um, since I was also sort of in this constant pursuit of my ideal body and reaching my goal weight and my goal physique, if you will, so I was kind of always on some sort of form of diet, for lack of a better term. I really do not like that word, but I know a lot of us are familiar with that term. So I, was always aware of how much I drank. Um, this means, that because I was always kind of watching what I ate and watching my food intake, whether I was calorie counting or macro tracking or whatever, I was always measuring and tracking everything. So this included what I was drinking, which meant that I was always kind of within a certain limit, if you will, in terms of what I was drinking. But then when I found that I was still struggling to lose weight despite all this, I had to start looking at possible reasons why that may have been happening. And that's when I started to learn that when it comes to losing weight, alcohol really just ain't your friend. It's just not. And I'll get into that a little bit more in a bit. But so as I followed this sort of trail about the effects of alcohol on weight loss, I also started to learn more about its effects on health. Now, I had a pretty good awareness and understanding of this in general anyway, because I had been working in um, substance use disorders in some form or fashion for the majority of my career. And the beginning of my career, I was actually working in a research library where I was basically studying various aspects of substance use disorders, alcohol and drug use, including how it affects our health and our well-being. So I had a good understanding of it, but I went deeper into this in recent months and years. And the bottom line for me is that there are really just more negative effects than the perceived benefits, if you will, for alcohol to really warrant continuing to include it in my, I guess, lifestyle. So I came to the conclusion that for me, there was no longer any place for alcohol in my life. I really wanted to get the results I've been striving for. I wanted to improve my health. I wanted to improve my weight loss efforts. And so I made the decision to cut it out of my life. And I told myself I was going to give it a year and see how I felt after that year. And here we are, I've come past that date. And I don't anticipate, bringing it back into my life anytime soon. So all that being said, let's get into the topics around this that I have for you today. So first, alcohol and health. So alcohol can have several different significant effects on our health, especially when it comes to long-term use. So in other words, basically, using it over a long period of time, maybe an indefinite period of time. So the first one is maybe more obvious, which is the liver. It affects our liver and the health of our liver. So our liver is responsible for detoxifying our body, basically. And when we drink, we put a really heavy load on the liver. And it basically kind of stops all other functions of our liver or anything else the liver is processing. It just kind of puts a stop to that whenever we drink alcohol. So there's that. But then chronic drinking can also lead to liver conditions such as fatty liver, hepatitis, and cirrhosis, none of which are good things or things you want to experience. And they can all have severe health consequences. The second effect of alcohol on our health is with regard to our brain functioning. So alcohol affects the brain's neurotransmitters, which is basically altering things like our mood, behavior, and our cognitive functioning. And long-term alcohol use is associated with mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, and an increased risk of neurodegenerative diseases. And as I mentioned earlier, while I thought that it was helping me calm down in the evenings when I was feeling a lot of stress and anxiety, it was actually making those things worse. I've also talked openly about having battled depression over the course of my life. And little did I know that it was actually making that worse as well. So it really just has kind of a amplifying effect on these things as well as other aspects of our brain functioning. And I remember I mentioned before I was working in a research library at one point about alcohol and drug use. And I remember coming across quite a volume of research at that time and over the years working there, because also during that time I was working in that field. I would go to different conferences, and so you would get exposed to all different kinds of research, cutting edge research, new research around different effects of different substances on our bodies and our brains. And I remember some of that research talked about how alcohol kind of like it actually deteriorates the brain matter. It kind of shrinks your brain. Um, Essentially, it sort of hardens the matter of your brain when you have long-term heavy alcohol use. So something else to keep in mind, like a lot of substances, the effects of a lot of substances on our brains, it can be irreversible with long-term heavier use. So just again, something to keep in mind. The third way that alcohol affects our health is with regard to our heart. So moderate alcohol consumption, particularly red wine, may offer some health benefits. There's some research indicating that it may have a beneficial effect in moderation. But I think what a lot of people might think of as moderation is actually not. And a lot of what I think many folks may think is moderate consumption is probably actually veering more into excessive drinking by definition, which is linked to higher blood pressure, heart disease, and an increased risk of stroke. So it's really important to get familiar with the definitions of heavy alcohol consumption, because like I said, what a lot of people might consider a moderate drinking is actually not. It actually usually falls into the definition of heavier alcohol consumption or even binge drinking. So again, look up those definitions. There's lots of great resources out there that can help you get an idea what that looks like. It differs for men and women. But it's important to have a good understanding of it because it does have an impact on your health. The fourth way alcohol affects our health is our immune system. So it basically weakens our immune system, which makes us more vulnerable to infections, and it also makes us slower to heal from illnesses when we do get sick. And last is sleep. So alcohol is sort of in a category of its own, right? So when you look at different substances, you'll see things like stimulants, which is, things like cocaine, for example. And then you have depressants, which may be things more like opiates or narcotics, things that sort of, depress the nervous system, have sort of a sedative type of effect. That's another category, sedatives. So there's various different categories of alcohol and other drugs, and alcohol is in a class of its own. And the reason for that is because it has both depressant and stimulant effects. So it's not really one or the other, and it doesn't really fit into these other categories because it kind of has this dual effect on our body. So this is one of the reasons that it affects our sleep. So a lot of people might think that alcohol helps you fall asleep, and it might help you fall asleep. The problem is it affects the quality of your sleep, and it disturbs your sleep. So what happens is it can affect your circadian rhythm and reduce your REM sleep, which are very important for feeling rested and overall sleep quality. So the other ways that alcohol affects our sleep is things like we might wake up frequently during the night. You may need to get up more often to urinate. It can also increase things like sleep apnea or a fight or flight response while we're sleeping, which of course is not going to help you feel rested in the morning, since it's essentially being in a stressful state while you're asleep. So those are some of the effects of alcohol on our health. Now let's get into alcohol and weight loss. So for those on a weight loss journey, like I said, I hate to burst your bubble, but alcohol is not helping you. It's not going to help you. Understanding how alcohol impacts your progress is really crucial, because you might want to take this into consideration and you might want to put a pause on it for a while. If you're struggling to maybe break a plateau, or if you're finding that you're not getting the results that you want, if you are drinking alcohol, this might be where you want to pay attention and see if you want to make some tweaks. So the first effect, or the first way that it impacts weight loss, is it has a high calorie content. There are no alcohol-free or there are no calorie-free alcoholic beverages. So, for example, like a glass of wine has about 125 calories. A pint of beer can have well over 200 calories. And they quickly add up, right? Because unless you're just having the one drink, you can easily start piling the calories up with each drink that you have. And that's assuming you're just having the glass of wine or the beer. If you're having like these mixed drinks and cocktails, you can easily be adding another 150 to 300 calories to that calorie toll there because of all the sugar, depending on what's being added to the drink. So that right there is a way that it can affect your weight loss efforts. Another way it affects your weight loss efforts, and this was the game changer for me when I started to really understand this, is metabolic disruption. So when you drink alcohol, right, basically all of your body's fat burning activities just stop because everything goes to processing the alcohol. So if you're trying to lose weight and you're following some sort of program or diet, nutrition plan, whatever you want to call it, to lose weight, burn more fat, whenever you drink, regardless of how religious you're being with your diet plan and how well you're sticking to your calorie limit or your macro limit or your carb limit or your fat limit, whatever you're doing, is all kind of for naught as soon as you drink. Because once you drink, your body is now focused entirely on processing the alcohol until the alcohol has been completely processed. So anything else that you've consumed that day is no longer being processed until the alcohol is done being processed. So that alone might be enough to convince you to put a pause on the alcohol for a while you are trying to further your weight loss efforts, or even if you're trying to kind of transform your body in some other way. It's still going to have an effect on it. Another way that alcohol affects your weight loss efforts is it increases your appetite and it reduces your inhibitions. So this will often lead us to overeat and or to choose not so great food choices when we are drinking, right? Like if many of us have been there, especially in our younger years, perhaps, where you've been out having lots of fun with your friends, drinking, and you get that middle of the night hunger, and you go and you're not going to get a salad, right? You're going to get some of these unhealthy or high fat foods that are they're not going to help your waistline when you're trying to lose weight. And so the amount of the extent to which you're doing this pretty often is going to counteract all that hard work that you put in your diet and exercise routine. So just something else to keep in mind. And last but not least, when it comes to weight loss, alcohol can also have hormonal effects. Basically disrupts the hormones that regulate our metabolism and our appetite, such as insulin and leptin. And that can make it harder to lose weight and manage hunger over the longer term. So if this has led you to maybe take into consideration cutting back or completely eliminating alcohol, here are some tips for managing alcohol consumption so that you can enjoy alcohol without sabotaging your health and weight loss goals. So first is number one, moderation. Stick to the recommended guidelines of up to 1 drink a day for women, up to 2 drinks a day for men. So keep note of that number. 1 drink a day for women, 2 drinks a day for men. Ask yourself, is that about where you're at, or are you over that? So you want to take a look at that. The second thing is smart choices. Opt for lower calorie drinks, such as light beer or dry wine. So this is like your drier white wines are generally going to be the ones that are lower calorie than the sweeter wines, or even the red wines tend to be higher in the calories. And then avoid those high sugar cocktails and mixers if you're trying to keep your weight down. Third is hydration. So drink a glass of water between alcoholic beverages and stay hydrated, so that can help with pacing your drinking. It can also help your body process the alcohol, speed up the processing of the alcohol so your body can get back to that fat burning as quickly as possible. Number 4, plan ahead. If you plan to drink, adjust your meal and exercise plan to account for those extra calories. So make sure you're paying attention to the amount you're drinking and how that fits within whatever your calorie budget is for the day. And this includes macro tracking. So I've done episodes in the past on macro tracking and kind of how you calculate the alcohol within that. But you do need to be aware of this, and you need to make sure that you're tracking alcohol as part of your calories, because even though it's something you're drinking, it's still got calories in it. And then 5 is mindful drinking. So reflect on why you're drinking. ensure it's for enjoyment and not like out of habit or stress, like I mentioned before, where I was starting to kind of veer down the path of, looking, kind of using it to help me with calming down and minimizing my stress in the evenings. Um, so that's what I have for you today. Alcohol can be a part of a balanced lifestyle. It's just important to be really mindful of these effects that we've talked about here on your health and on your weight loss goals. And because I love you, I will always recommend cutting it out altogether. But I recognize that's not for everyone. It may not be what everybody wants to do. Just having been, a year alcohol free, I have found nothing but benefits from that. And so it's just, I would recommend it. I don't miss certain things about drinking, and I feel a lot better. So I would encourage you to take that in consideration. But like I said, following the tips I've outlined above can help you a lot, and help you to still be able to enjoy it while still also achieving your wellness objectives. So as always, I appreciate you tuning in today. If you found this useful, please be sure to subscribe and share it with others. It really helps me out if you like and subscribe. It just helps with my overall efforts with the podcast and the YouTube channel. And also, if you feel inclined and you really like the show, please consider donating or making a contribution to the show. And I'll include the link in the description and in the comments here on the Facebook Live. And remember, friends, your journey to health, happiness, and fitness is unique. So take it one step at a time and enjoy the process. Stay healthy, stay happy. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next time.